Fight week for the biggest event in UFC history has arrived, and Washington, D.C. looks like nothing the sport has ever produced. 85,000 people gathering at the Ellipse, the Washington Monument visible from the Fighter Hotel. The Claw standing on the South Lawn, a 92-foot steel structure that people are describing as absolutely massive in person, in a way that photos and specs simply do not convey. The Lincoln Memorial hosting the press conference. Marco Rubio announcing that over 1 billion global viewers are expected to watch. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, Ilia Topuria standing alone inside the Octagon at the White House, listening to his walkout song, completely locked in, visualizing the biggest fight of his career while the world builds the stage around him. This is not a normal fight week. This is something the sport has never seen and will not see again. The face-off between Topuria and Gaethje at the Lincoln Memorial press conference produced exactly what fight weeks are supposed to produce and almost never actually deliver. A moment of genuine physical escalation that had nothing theatrical about it. Topuria moved toward Gaethje, got in his face, told him to come closer. Gaethje responded by asking if Topuria was going to hit him, then told him to do it. Topuria said he did not want to hurt him before the fight, that he wanted him healthy and filled in for the actual contest. The tension in that exchange was real in a way that most press conference confrontations are not. Both men have already crossed personal lines in this build-up. Gaethje brought up the divorce. Topuria lost his respect for Gaethje publicly and repeatedly. What happened at the Lincoln Memorial was the physical expression of everything that has accumulated over fight week, compressed into a moment that required security to manage. That is the kind of energy that goes into the cage on Sunday. Josh Hokett provided the strangest subplot of the press conference, and it is worth describing in full because it captures something true about fight week chaos. Topuria was screaming at someone to take Hokett's microphone away. Hokett, rather than escalating in kind, switched into what is being described as his shy persona, apologizing, saying Topuria is probably his favorite fighter, expressing admiration for the knockouts. Topuria was visibly frustrated by the inability to generate a clean confrontation. You cannot properly dismiss a man who is apologizing and complimenting you simultaneously. Hokett either understood this tactically or stumbled into it accidentally. Either way, it worked as a neutralization of whatever Topuria was trying to accomplish in that moment, and it made for one of the more genuinely bizarre press conference interactions of recent fight weeks. The weather situation has not improved, and it is now the central logistical anxiety of the entire event. The forecast is sitting at a 55% chance of rain and a 33% chance of thunderstorms for Sunday night. Dana White has said nothing stops this event unless a full-blown thunderstorm hits, and the specific trigger is lightning within 8 miles of the Octagon, which requires a mandatory evacuation of a venue that has 4,000 people inside and 85,000 more at the Ellipse with no shelter. The sport has never staged a modern UFC event outdoors with these kinds of weather variables. The canvas gets slippery. Fighter safety becomes a genuine concern. The humidity alone changes how athletes perform across 5 rounds in a way that nobody can fully model in advance because nobody has done this before. Dana White is projecting certainty. The weather forecast is projecting probability. Sunday night will resolve the contradiction. The Sean Strickland story at the press conference is one of the great unintentional comedy moments of UFC Fight Week in recent memory. The current middleweight champion, a man with one of the most recognizable faces in the sport, bought plane tickets to Washington, D.C. to attend the event, covered his face with a hoodie, sat in the back of the crowd trying to watch the press conference anonymously, and got flagged by security who told him to remove his face covering. He told them he was the middleweight champion and that removing the hoodie was going to be a problem. They insisted. He complied. A cop shone a flashlight directly in his face. The crowd lost its mind. Security abandoned him immediately. He had to run. The detail that he mentioned not being able to refund the plane tickets is the most Strickland possible reason to be in a situation you did not want to be in. Alex Pereira shaved his head for fight week and the reception has been unanimous. Full Potan mode, the most relaxed and dangerous version of him that observers have seen heading into any fight. Israel Adesanya, the man who knocked Pereira out and reclaimed the middleweight title from him, is publicly rooting for Pereira to make history at heavyweight. He compared it to watching the first person climb Everest. He said he wants to see it done. He said he played a part in helping Pereira get there and that there is something genuinely cool about that. He picked Pereira by left hook, Shamba, as he called it, noting it was the left hand. He also acknowledged what almost every analyst has been saying, It is a hard fight, it is Pereira's first time at heavyweight in MMA, and nothing about it is going to be easy. Adesanya's honesty about the difficulty while still picking Pereira to find the finish is the most credible version of the Pereira endorsement, precisely because it is not unconditional. Volkanovski added important technical texture to the Pereira-Gane breakdown. He said knocking Gane out is genuinely hard. He tried himself, and while the fight was short, he experienced firsthand how difficult it is to put Gane away cleanly. He said if Gane gets the stoppage it comes later in the fight, maybe round 4 or 5, because Gane is faster than most light heavyweights and is a genuinely big heavyweight as well. He did not pick against Pereira. The left hook is absolutely there, but he framed it as a hard fight in a way that feels grounded in actual competitive experience rather than analytical guesswork. Someone who has been in the cage with Gane and felt what his movement actually looks like from the inside is a more reliable source than anyone working purely from film. Topuria's comments about Charles Oliveira are worth examining at length because they represent something real about who Topuria is underneath the king persona. He said he apologized to Oliveira before the fight. He explained that he was originally supposed to fight Islam Makhachev for the title, and when Islam moved up in weight, the UFC called and told him it would be Oliveira instead. Topuria told Oliveira he was sorry because he knew what was going to happen in the fight between them and he did not want that for someone he genuinely liked. He described Oliveira as one of the great human beings he has met in the sport. He talked about Oliveira's rare mindset, the ability to lose the aura that most fighters lose after a defeat, and somehow come back stronger. He said most fighters who lose in the UFC lose their confidence and their presence. Oliveira keeps his, and Topuria views that as something approaching a special quality that deserves genuine admiration. The man who told Gaethje he was going to put him to sleep in front of his whole family is also the man who apologized to Oliveira for what was coming. Both of those things are true simultaneously, and the coexistence of them tells you more about Topuria's actual character than either one does alone. The shift in Topuria's broader public posture this fight week has been noticed by the MMA community, and it is not subtle. He spoke respectfully about Khabib, declining to entertain hypothetical matchup questions by saying Khabib had an amazing career and he had nothing but respect for him. He addressed Arman Tsarukyan without personal animosity, acknowledging that Arman is doing exactly what any elite athlete needs to do to chase the title and that there is nothing personal between them. He praised Oliveira. He has been measured with Gaethje publicly in ways that are occasionally interrupted by genuine anger about the divorce comments, but even that anger has been expressed with precision rather than chaos. The question being asked is whether this is a new, mature version of the champion or the calm before the storm that comes after Gaethje is finished on Sunday night. The answer is probably both. A man who has reached a level of competitive security where he does not need the external performance of dominance to feel it internally, and who reserves the full expression of that dominance for the Octagon rather than the press conference. Daniel Cormier's technical breakdown with Topuria produced the most interesting tactical exchange of fight week that did not involve trash talk. They discussed power generation, hip rotation, base stability. Cormier noted that when Topuria punches, his feet do not get crossed, his base does not get too wide or too narrow, it stays exactly where it needs to be to generate power through the hips. Topuria responded by saying he is one of the best at closing distance and closing angles, and that even the best movers in the world eventually have to stop. When they stop, he said, that is when his time arrives. He used Volkanovski as the example, the best mover in the Octagon, neutralized in the first round because once he ran out of movement options and had to stop, Topuria was there. That is not a random tactical observation. That is a man who has internalized a specific theory of how fights end and applied it successfully against every opponent he has faced. Gaethje is not a pure mover. He comes forward. He initiates contact. By Topuria's own analysis, that is the ideal version of an opponent for what he does. Chimaev and Danis had their backstage confrontation at RAF 10, and the footage was as chaotic as the build-up suggested it would be. Chimaev wanted to fight immediately. Danis was talking. Security kept them separated. Chimaev made it clear that his rematch with Strickland is the priority after this weekend. He said directly that he does not agree with the judge's decision and that next time he is going to take Strickland's head off. He also said he is waiting for Dana and Hunter to bring Strickland to the cage because Strickland is avoiding the gym. Whether that is accurate or competitive framing, the intent is clear. Chimaev lost for the first time in his professional career at UFC 328, and the response is exactly what you would expect from a man who has never processed a loss before. Complete rejection of the outcome and immediate demand for another shot at the person who handed it to him. Here is what Sunday produces. Topuria walks out of the Oval Office with more personal motivation than any fight in his career, encounters a Gaethje who has prepared intelligently and specifically for a longer fight, survives whatever Gaethje brings in the first 2 minutes, and then finds the opening that his theory of fighting predicts he will always find, the moment when a fighter stops moving and Topuria is already there. Pereira enters full Poatan mode against a Gane who is faster than anyone he has previously faced at any weight class, navigates the first round with a kind of dog mentality that has always made him more dangerous than his defense suggests, and finds the left hook when the calf kick accumulation finally slows the footwork enough to create the opening. The weather holds. The billion viewers watch. And Washington, D.C. gets the moment that nobody will forget.